Okay, unbelievable but true. One of the psychiatrists who was part of the group that wrote a book that lists all the mental health disorders, Dr. Francis, has come out in the public eye to warn people about fraudulent practices in psychiatry. Psychiatry relies heavily on a book called Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, DSM. This book contains hundreds of terms that are considered mental illnesses. Most of us are familiar with the term attention deficit disorder. So this magazine reported on December 27th, 2010, that Dr. Alan Francis, the lead editor of the 4th edition of the DSM, is openly criticizing his colleagues as they draw up the next edition of the DSM. One of the primary criticisms has been stated for countless years by advocacy groups, scientists, medical doctors. Now, one of psychiatry's leaders are stating it as well. Referring to psychiatric diagnoses, Francis is stating that these diagnoses lack science and are making diseases out of everyday suffering. The Wired magazine article states Francis as saying, "We made mistakes that had terrible consequences." In the article, it explains that diagnosis of autism, attention deficit disorder, and bipolar disorder skyrocketed. And Francis thinks his manual inadvertently facilitated these epidemics. And, in the bargain, fostered an increasing tendency to chalk up life's difficulties into mental illness, and then treat them with psychiatric drugs. In a paper titled "A Warning Sign on the Road to DSM-5, Beware of its Unintended Consequences," Francis issues some primary concerns he has with psychiatry diagnosing and labeling our culture. There can be no dramatic leap in psychiatric diagnosis until we make a fundamental leap in understanding what causes mental disorders. The clearest evidence supporting this fact is that not even one biological test is ready for inclusion in the criteria sets for the new DSM-5. If this was not warning enough, Francis continues and says, in order to promote drug sales, the companies may well sponsor expensive education campaigns focusing on the diagnostic changes that most enhance the rate of diagnosis for those disorders that will lead to the increased writing of prescriptions. It should therefore be no surprise if there are many new epidemics based on changes in DSM-5. The result would be a wholesale imperial medicalization of normality that will trivialize mental disorder and lead to a deluge of unneeded medical treatments. A bonanza for the pharmaceutical industry, but at a huge cost to the new false positive patients caught in the excessively wide DSM-5 net. They will pay a high price in side effects, dollars, and stigma, not to mention the unpredictable impact on insurability, disability, and forensics. This means that a lot of people are going to be told they're mentally ill, put on drugs, and that's going to feed a lot of money to the pharmaceutical industry. Wow, imagine for lots of people who have been told they're mentally ill, they find out there's no test to prove they're mentally ill, and the guy that wrote the book with all the so-called mental disorders is stating right up in the news that more people are going to be diagnosed with mental illness. For me, for you, I think it would be a good idea to get educated on this subject. Once again, I find this site super informative. www.cchrflorida.org. Till next time, be informed, be yourself.